hello again. I'm Belinda from Brooklyn Ridge Farm, and I'm here to give you a bit of a tour of our late summer, end of summer, early autumn garden. And this is probably when the garden is looking its wildest, most unkempt, because if you're familiar with a southeast Queensland summer, it's variations of hot, hot and very hot, and if we're lucky, very humid it can be as well. So everything's looking pretty wild. We've got a big pile of sweet potato vines here, which has just been picked out of these beds over here. And sweet potato is actually one of the crops we use to over summer our wicking beds, because just like the soil anywhere, like in the ground and not just in a wicking bed, having something actively growing in that soil really keeps it a lot healthier. You've got that organic matter contribution, and it keeps all your soil life ticking over because you're watering it and you keep the moisture up to it. As soon as you sort of take all the life out of the soil, well, then you're starting from a blank slate again every autumn. Sorry for all the roosters crowing and whatnot as well, but welcome to the farm. So let's step in and see what's happening. I did have it would have been like a January crop of corn that was in here. That was cut down, and I prefer to actually put all the stubble and leave it on the bed, but the ants really love that as well. So this mulch is sitting there full of ants, and the bed is like this, and it is about to get flooded with water to try to encourage the ants to go somewhere else. A nice little feature added to the garden that I found in the shed. No, it is not plumbed in. Over here, this has also run pumpkin and corn and whatnot through it, and now we're just going to try to push out a last crop of zucchini before things get cold. We've also got plenty of self-seeded lettuce popping up in here, which is more than welcome, and a couple of Chinese lettuce there that I'm just trying to see what they're like, because we eat a lot of leafy greens and stuff here. There's also some sunflowers dotted in amongst it, but I did plant them when Cyclone Alfred, is it Cyclone Alfred or Albert? Alfred was around, so soil might have been a little bit wet. Let's go to feraldom over here. So this is where the sweet potatoes were. This is completely covered. As you can see, it also spreads across the ground and goes wherever it likes. But that has basically meant that these beds have pretty well only been growing sweet potato and no weeds and whatnot. And like the soil structure here is amazing. Like, look at the crumb in this. This hasn't been actually watered for a bit, so probably tad dry, but you know, this is a wicking bed. We don't put scoria or any of this nonsense in the bottom, and that is beautiful soil to be working with. And there's a harvest of sweet potatoes that we've got from there. And there's a piece of ginger floating around somewhere too, because I happened to, obviously with the last crop of ginger in here, some of it popped up out of the ground again. So I actually managed to get a nice piece of ginger out of there this morning. And as you can see, I've left all that corn stubble after the last crop of corn that was in there. I left it there, and the sweet potatoes have been growing over the top of that. And so now the plan is for these beds, because these will be growing other crops through autumn and winter, we'll get some compost and just pop that down on top of that. On both of these, I'll just get topped up with some compost, and then we'll sow straight into it. And yes, I'll leave all of that there. There are massive worms in these beds, so they will take care of business, as will all the other fungi and other microorganisms in there. Behind us, I can never remember what this is called, but as you can see, it's supposed to be one of these sort of greens alternatives that you can grow here in the subtropics for summer. And as soon as you get a bush that's this healthy and not many things are eating it, it usually also applies to humans. Like, it's okay, but not amazing. So it just gets cut back periodically, and it will stay there until I get tired of it being there, because it tends to take over this bed. There's some leeks left over from winter. Back here, and I know in the last video I did show, I think that we had a trellis here, and I ran some gem squash up the trellis, and also this is just cowpea. So again, working on that whole concept of you're better growing something in the soil than leaving it bare. And so this has had a really big, that was a trellis here, the whole big crop of cowpeas. It's all just been cut down and put onto the soil. And again, this is obviously a few of them still sprouting. We will just come along and actually pop some compost over the top of that, and that will all just pack down and be processed into the soil, and it will be beautiful. Okay, come this way. This is a crazy just bin that we put here, like an empty bin, and we fill it with compost. And somehow this yellow sweet potato got into it, and it's actually produced a couple of kilograms of sweet potato. As the compost level has been falling, the sweet potatoes have been appearing. And it certainly does a lot better than the poor old comfrey that's in there. Okay, swinging over here into the massive nut grass and whatnot, but this actually all has wood chip on it. But the nut grass is pushed through, so maybe through winter we might redo all the pathways. We'll see how the energy levels are. This bed here has over summered, and this is kangkong. And again, it's one of these crops that just does really well when it's hot. I'm not a huge fan of it. We do eat it a bit. You can cook it up like spinach, so it's like a good wilted, I prefer it that way, wilted leafy green. But again, it's covering the soil. So when it's just too hot for everything else, you've got these guys out there doing the work for you. So, but I'll pretty well cut and pull most of that out. I might leave one little shoot that'll carry it through winter. And then when it starts getting hot again at the end of the year, just let it go again. Over here, this has actually had a big crop of amaranth in it. It's possibly also had corn, can't remember. But the Elysium self-seeds, so we just let that be there. Now this is, what is it called? We'll put the name up on the screen, but again, it's another one of these leafy green alternatives that you can grow in summer here in southeast Queensland. So it looks a little bit amaranthy, but it is not part of the amaranth family. This is amaranth coming that has self-seeded at the back here. But this is actually not too bad to eat, so we'll put the name on the screen. Like most things, I just threw some seeds in and then never bothered to thin it out, and I was supposed to. I was going to plant them around the place, but you know, it's pretty good. That's the gardening style here. Sometimes things get followed through and sometimes they don't. This one has had cucumbers and whatnot in it. None of us particularly like cucumbers, but it grew by itself, and now it's just waiting really to be topped up with compost. I always feel bad, like this is not really productive, like it's growing flowers and that's great for bees, etc., which we need, but it sort of did that last year too, so I sort of keep that in mind with these beds. Like, have you actually produced anything useful for us, or are you just really sitting there taking up space? So that may get trimmed back and I'll plant some winter veggies maybe in there. Okay, over here with this glorious looking trellis that is all leaning over, I was going to try a crop of beans, but again, as stuff gets really hot here, the beans just get annihilated. One here managed to self-seed from its, I don't know how it did that, but it is not a particularly attractive specimen. But what I did do is our comfrey here struggles in winter, like in summer. Everybody goes on about comfrey being this great plant and grow lots of it. That's okay in the right place, and the only place we've found that's really great for growing comfrey is in here. Give it a wicking bed where it's got a nice depth of soil, because we're on clay here, nice depth of soil and unlimited water, and it's living its best life. So that's not going to get to do that all through winter. I'm actually going to use that and make some maybe comfrey teas and stuff from it. But that's how we can keep a comfrey plant going here through summer. Down here, this is the snake bean. I was a little bit late at getting these started. I would have preferred to have had these probably a little bit further along, but again, it's another one, like I just tend to find it just starts to get so hot and humid through the depths of summer that everything just gets, you have to have that right on my face. I just find that everything just starts to suffer. Even these kind of plants can get really knocked around by the little midges and little spiders, and I don't know what they are, but they tend to cause havoc. But look, we do have a couple of these on. These are the snake beans. This is supposed to be a purple potted variety. It's not looking real purple to me. And I think I bought those on eBay, so I guess like most things on eBay, buyer beware. I don't tend to buy seeds on eBay, but I don't know. I thought it was a good idea. This is, what is that? Sumatran spinach. Something like that. Again, one of these things that we grow for greens through summer here. It's quite a pretty plant. It self-seeds readily, so it appears everywhere around the garden now. And yeah, we pull a few leaves and that off for salads and stuff, but again, you're not going to have a big bowl of it. Like, it's a bit it's not slimy like Malabar spinach, which I think is revolting, but it's good to have a little bit of. The moringa tree is still going. So I don't know how old this is now, 4 or 5 years. It got severely pruned back for Cyclone Alfred prep because I really didn't want, it was really tall, I didn't want anything snapping off in the high winds that we were predicted to get, which thankfully we never actually got here. But one thing with moringa, it loves a good prune, so it's coming back now, giving us a ton of leaves. And all the leaves that we did take off it, and we didn't, not the branches, but the actual leaves, we've put them all in a big bag in the freezer, and so I put that in smoothies daily, like the spinach basically. This is yacon. So the yacon, after we harvested it last year, we actually let it sit in a box for far too long, and they got all shriveled up, and we're like, uh-oh, these aren't going to grow. But by some miraculous stroke of luck, and nature being what it is, it's actually come through. This one's looking pretty good, and we'll go over to the other garden shortly and show you one there that's living its best life. But the Yacon is a ground apple, so what we're going to harvest from this is when it dies down, under here there will be a whole lot of, and they're probably still developing because it won't be till sort of later in the year. That's its growing points in there, but there'll be a whole lot of, a bit like a sweet potato, a whole lot of tubers that we can, that you can just peel and eat like an apple, or chop up in chunks and throw it in smoothies and stuff again. And also over the back, there is a turmeric. Now that took ages to come up. Threw that bit of turmeric in there, I don't know, like September or something last year. And that didn't appear until just a couple of months ago. So again, I don't know much about the growth cycle of turmeric, but I thought it was a goner. But again, it's probably the healthiest looking turmeric we have on the place. And I'd say again, you've got a consistent soil moisture profile, nice depth of soil. It's happy because again, when you, like we are here, we've got a little bit of soil and then a whole lot of clay. So plants tend to struggle. Here in Rat Trapville, so there's all these rat traps here, which is a beautiful look in the garden. This, I was trying to get a late corn crop out, and the rats and the mice also really like corn, and even our cats, we've noticed, really like the thiram, like the poison, whatever it is, coating that they put onto corn seeds. I do try to buy organic seeds most of the time, but the ones I happen to have, I've got a little bit of thiram on them. And that seems to just bring all the boys to the yard, well, all the rats to the yard anyway, and they were digging out the seeds as fast as I could plant them. Since that's happened, I've actually managed to catch the culprit, and he's gone, but I've got a really poor strike. This was one of the first attempts, and then there's a couple that have come up since, so maybe this weekend I might pop some more in there and give it another shot. Here, beans. There's some beans that have been planted along the back there. Generally looking okay. It's amazing. You look at them in the morning, they're looking great, and you come back in the afternoon and something's happened. I don't know what's happened, but something's happened. And I've got some cos lettuce that we've started from seed that are growing up in there, as well as another Chinese lettuce. In the front here, look at this overgrownness. This is the glory of summer gardening. Look at it, beautiful. In any case, self-seeded bush beans, look at that, living their best life, and I've actually had quite a few handfuls of beans off those, so that's good. There's nothing, only something to gain because they're doing something great for the soil, happening to give me a bonus crop of beans, because I can guarantee if I planted those at this time of year, they would have been hopeless. Ginger in there, which is great. It's just decided to come up in there because there must have been a bit left over. There is also, oh yeah, look, passion fruit. So we've got passion fruit vines sort of around the place, and we tend to eat a passion fruit and then, you know, chuck the compostable part maybe sometimes straight into the garden bed, and as a result we're getting passion fruits popping up everywhere. Here in this beautiful flower bed that I'm about to show you, I am joking by the way, but self-seeded, and look, they're just pretty little, these are zinnias, I don't know, it's like their third or fourth year of growing by themselves, and if something's that tough, it just deserves a shot. So it's left there. Look at this little cutie, huh? Happy little faces over here. And then in this bed behind us, self-seeded cherry tomato, because I just don't try to grow tomatoes here through summer because the fruit fly just annihilate them. There are various eggplants that were all self-seeded. Pawpaw, chili bush has been getting a touch up with ants this year. So I have been trying to address those with it because this bit looks okay at the moment, but the ants have been farming all their aphids and stuff on it and taking all the moisture away from the roots. Big plans for that bed as well. That one, both these beds here need to be more productive in the scheme of things, because that is the trap you get into. You leave a plant, you go, oh, poor little plant, it looks nice and healthy. And then you get to the end of winter when you're growing a lot of the crops you can't grow for the rest of the year, and you actually haven't grown them because you felt sorry for the stupid pawpaw that's probably never going to bear fruit anyway, and other random things that have grown by themselves. Come around the end. That's passion fruit marigold. They're purely for aesthetics. It doesn't look beautiful now, but when it flowers it does. And this is our Queensland arrowroot. So this patch here was fully snipped off and used as mulch. I find it really great to just chop it off and drop it straight onto the wicking beds, because it actually breaks down pretty quickly. You sort of wouldn't think so feeling it. but it does, like I think both of those beds have had a full covering of this material, so that has all in through summer just broken down onto that. But I am intending to get in here and actually have a crack at harvesting some of this. I mean, it sounds like a bit of work to dig it up and do whatever you have to do to it to turn into flower, but there's enough there to probably give it a go. All right, so that's garden area 1, the main kitchen garden, the wicking beds. This is how it looks coming out of summer. It's been pretty wild, but stuff growing in the soil is better than bare soil. And so now let's head on over to the other one and have a look. Okay, here we are in this is the old veggie garden. I've shown this in that last video where we have a lot of raised garden beds. Probably the most obvious thing that you're seeing is this big ugly piece of plastic here on the ground, or tarp. I have got this silly idea in my head that we should grow some wheat for milling for our own bread, you know, because why not? You got to do these things once at least in your life. So I'm going to grow it there, because this is probably the only place on the whole place that I can keep the goats, the sheep, the dogs, the bandicoots, the hares and everything else out of. Because what we'll do is probably, once we've killed the grass off and put some compost down, we can run a little low electric fence wire around that to keep everything else out that would like to enjoy the wheat. I don't know how farmers do it. I mean, I guess that's why they plant so much of it, because then all the critters can have their share and you still get a bit off it. So that's what that beautiful thing is, a highlight, a real feature of the garden at this time of year. So there's been a corn crop here, and I might have had that going in at the last video, and oversowing of pigeon pea. I'm actually going to come out the salve and harvest these. I don't know, you can make flour out of it, but probably mainly just have a few saved seeds from this lot. And in there then was the corn, and a lot of it is still there. I was going to cut it down after it finished, but I never got around to it, so it's all there. But then in amongst that we actually have, that is a bit of turmeric, there's also a bit of ginger coming up in there. So, and like they quite like that sort of shady environment. So anyway, on the cards is trim this pigeon pea back, harvest the seeds, trim this back and feed it to the sheep, which we'll show you them, they're just over the fence there, and give a little bit more light to the turmeric and the ginger as it finishes off. Then also I've got 3 different types of sweet potato growing over here this year. Again, with that thing of I'd rather cover the soil than allow it to be full of weeds and stuff through summer. So this is a white variety. I don't know if I'm that keen to stick my hand in there without a glove on. I'll probably just pick up a toad. Oh look, it's even flowering, so I believe that's quite a good sign, because it will be putting tubers down. We have actually harvested a couple out of there. But as you can see, that is a raised bed and it is taking up more than its fair share of space. But that's okay. If that wasn't growing there, there'd probably be weeds there. The choco vine has loved this year because we've actually had decent amounts of rain. So it's super moisture loving. And the bees absolutely adore it, and it's flowering again right now. And look, the ants adore it too. Buggers and things. Choco vine, and have been picking a few chocos off that again. Through the middle of summer, there's nothing coming off this. Again, it's just too hot. The flowers, if it's even got flowers, they just don't set because it's just too hot. All right, this pile of pipe has been on my list to move for months, and it is still here. So it was probably here in the last video, and it's still here. That's, you know, it's on the to-do list. In here, I've actually chucked in some sugarcane. What are those things? Billets or something, I think they call it. That was only about a week ago. So down in here, somewhere, there, that's sugarcane. And I'm hoping that I can get that away before it gets too cold. It'd be good just to get a little bit of height on it, because we do get frosts here. Probably in this area won't be too bad of a frost. I don't have ambitions of having this full of sugarcane forever, but this is more of a perennial sort of garden area because it's not right at the kitchen door. So I will grow crops here that just need a bit more space, can get neglected, So that's what's happening there. We had a choco vine going up the Tipuana. That's what this is. This is what this ambience has created, looking like something from a horror movie or whatever. All the vines hanging down and dead. But we did tidy up the Tipuana to let some more light into our nursery over there. So hence the choco is sulking, but it's not given up. It's still got a bit of greenery here. And I also squeezed a couple of cherry tomatoes in the middle the other day when the cyclone was around, and they've all germinated, so I might let them grow through winter. Blueberries haven't died yet, so that's good. There's another blueberry there. Our fun weed that gets into all our garden beds. Poison pratia is, again, doing its best to be a pain in the A, but a nuisance. I think that's a bird's eye chili, if it ever does anything. Dogbane. So this is like the nursery stock of dogbane. We just chucked a piece in here. Now I did an experiment through summer where I had sort of a handful of it, and I just sat it on the edge of one of these wicking beds with no contact with the soil or anything to see how long it would take for it to die. It doesn't die. It sat there for months in the blistering sun, all shriveled up, looking miserable, but it wasn't dead. And as soon as we got the first drop of rain, it all just sprung back to life, even though it wasn't in contact with the soil. So I've decided the only way to manage dogbane is I basically cut it and I throw it back on itself. And that's the way to manage dogbane officially. Yacon, look at this one. Hey, amazing. This one is living its best life. It loves it here in this spot for some reason. So again, this one, they took ages to come up because the little corms were so shriveled up and terrible looking. But job done, looks good. Another one there, I don't know why it isn't as happy. It did have zucchini growing beside it, so whether it just didn't get along with zucchini. Elysium has self-seeded. There has been some spaghetti squash. That feels rotten, so I'll give that to the chickens. Let's show a bit of that harvesting technique. We ready? This is how we manage stuff in this garden. Look out. I might have to go in there with the machete and chop that in half. Not the chickens, but the... right. A new blueberry, because blueberries die here. I adore them, eat kilograms of them. Would like to be able to grow at least some. Anyway, that's in there. It has been surrounded by a very expensive bag of camellia potting mix to try to coax it along to survive. Moringa, this one was cut back before the cyclone, because with moringas you only want to really let them get about that high, and so that you can encourage this branching and more leaf production. Otherwise, they'll just grow into these tall, spindly, miserable-looking trees. I mean, maybe not where they come from, but here they grow into tall, spindly, miserable-looking trees. Rose, because. Right, over here, against this beautiful backdrop of sweet potatoes and weeds and grass, in here is actually the first crop of sugar snap peas. Could be a little bit cheeky and a bit ambitious. It's still a bit warm, but hey. There's no harm in trying. And this is some giant Stuttgart beans that have self-seeded. They were there first. Got an average crop off them because the bean flies or whatever it is got into them and sort of made them all look a bit crap. And the marigolds are left over. They've come through summer too. You know, you feel sorry for them. Like, you probably should cut them off because they're a bit yuck. But this is cosmos that comes up by itself. And supposedly, like, this won't flower. Once it gets bushy like that, that's not going to flower, so it's good green matter. I have seen it's because there's too much nutrient, but I'm not sure about that. This is just growing in pathways, which has had wood chip and stuff on it. I think it's because it's like the self-seeded second, third generation or something. I don't know. Anyway, I have a couple more little moringas in here. Believe it or not, these are the same age as the bigger one, and these were snipped off Alfred. So when was that? Was that early March? So these were just a single little stick out of the ground, and as you can see, just that snipping off has encouraged all this extra branching. So these will come up and provide a lot more leaf. Absolutely trash carrots there, only really good for throwing at things. I think we topped this up with a bit of sandy purchased soil, and it was just too hard and rubbish. But anyway, there's something there growing there. Over here we have the yellow sweet potatoes. So I've had a pretty decent, get a bit nervous walking through here because of the snakes, but we have had a pretty decent harvest sort of out of that corner. I haven't even gone to this section yet, but I reckon there's probably plenty in there. There we go, look at that. That's how we do it. Long and thin, but if we have a bit of a dig around, there's probably some bigger ones in there. And these, I can't remember what the difference is. This might be a purple skinned white, and that's a white skinned white. I don't know. This one though hasn't had any extra water through summer, whereas these other ones have. This is on the list. That's what that pipe is for, is to give this some drip irrigation, and I haven't got there. It doesn't stop the grass from growing, and that is how we deal with that. Pigeon pea provides a little bit of shade, but we also have this backdrop of tipuana, which are about to get chopped down and fed to. If you look through the chicken pen, those hungry mouths peering through the sheep. They adore tipuana. Final thing for the tour is we've got all these wild beds. It's all a bit untidy. This is the reality of how gardening looks. I know on Instagram and places like that you see all the beautiful stuff. This is what it can look like, and like, we love this. To me, seeing this is showing diversity. It's showing life. As soon as you try to control it too much and you've got it all screwed down, you've got one like this. Like, I really don't like this bed. Look how bare it is. This looks miserable. It needs some mulching. It needs some more life happening in it. So living mulch is your best thing. But anyway, it's all about to get a bit of a tidy up, and often I'm too slack to get around to planting seeds with enough time to grow them up to then plant them out. But I have actually pulled my finger out this year, and we have quite a decent array of seeds coming up. They're looking pretty cool. We've got some nasturtiums and broccoli and calendula. There's flowers and whatnot happening there. More tomatoes than we could ever possibly do anything with. And again, I don't grow tomatoes, but I'm having another go at putting some in through winter in places around the farm. These are just a cherry tomato, a tomato, broccoli. This beautiful cover is just to protect that broccoli mainly, because opportunistic grasshoppers fly by and think, oh, let's come and eat that. And a final little piece in here, we've got a few trees that we got from Daly's. They're about to go out. And just the final little project is my tea. So this is Camellia sinensis, just a normal tea plant. I actually purchased these as bare rooted, get out fly, bare rooted little seedlings from a company called Bryn Hill. I think they're Topaz up in North Queensland. They've got a website anyway. It's quite tricky to find some tea plants. I have planted all of those out into pots, and we'll grow them on a little bit in here and then put them out in a couple of our food forests. I think it's probably one of those things that's probably more trouble than it's worth. But I'm a big tea drinker, so hey, we'll play around. A few more seeds and stuff germinating over here. I tend to try to get them to germinate here, and then rather than, I was going to buy a grow light to hang in here because it's just not bright enough and the seedlings get a bit leggy. And then I thought, stop being lazy. And so I actually, once they've germinated, take them out each day and put them out in the trolley out there to get a bit more sun. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the tour. Hopefully next time we get another one of these together, because they're certainly very much off the cuff. This is my second shirt for this morning, by the way, and look at the sweat on it already. Maybe when we check back in through winter or whatever, we might have some wheat growing here, or not, who knows. Like, that's how stuff tends to roll. But it should look a little bit different. We tend to get all the nice things happening through winter. So thanks for checking in, and hope you enjoy it. Wearing a little dress.